So pre-regret, pre-burnout, pre-time lost. It's not a quick pill, but it's more of a way of living, that's a little more intentional and a little more freeing, but more joy.
Welcome to Permission Slips, a space to practice paying attention to your life with self-compassion so you can experience the wholeness, purpose, and joy you were made for. I'm Jillian DeBritz, a life and leadership coach and a recovering perfectionist, learning alongside you how to give myself permission to be human. I'm so glad you're here with me for this conversation with my friend, Jesse Aguero. Jesse, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Jillian. Good to see you.
It's good, so good to have you. Jesse is not only a dear friend and fellow coach, but he's a professional certified coach who has worked with clients from all around the world, helping them navigate life and leadership challenges. He received his advanced certification in transitional coaching through Western Seminary and his associate certified coach, or ACC, credential through the International Coaching Federation. With 30 years in executive leadership, 25 years of marriage, and 18 years of parenting, he's really been equipped with a wide variety of tools to help leaders grow and move forward with a clear vision. Jesse, what a gift it is to have you not only as a friend and a fellow coach, also as someone who has coached me, now come to this podcast to talk about the power of coaching in our life and leadership. I'm just so excited to have you here.
Yeah, it's such a privilege to be here. I'm just so excited to see you launch this, and you've been doing such a great job, having listened to episodes, and such a good fit. So yeah, it's fun being in the space with you.
Well, I remember you, it wasn't too many months ago, saying, Jillian, what can I do? What support can I give you to get this podcast launched? You were one of my biggest cheerleaders and advocates. So yeah, I'm just really grateful for your role in the journey to get here. And I think about our journey as friends over the last several years. I'm trying to remember, how long have we known each other?
It's going on 4 or 5.
Yeah, feels like longer in a lot of ways. We met through our mutual friend, and actually my first coach, Ron Sauer, is the one who gave me an introduction to coaching. Several years ago, he rallied together a group of us coaches as in an effort to create a sort of community of coaches that we could sharpen each other's skills and encourage one another and grow as coaches together. And we've been meeting now for several years. We call ourselves Paraclete coaches. Over the course of that time, you have coached me many, many times, especially around my business journey as a coach, writing journey, podcast journey. And so I have been just a grateful recipient of your expertise. But I'm curious, Jesse, if you would just be willing to share about your journey into coaching.
Sure. So Ron was that same instigator for me on getting into formal coaching. But really my journey began back in, I believe it was 2007. And I had just taken on a director position with an organization. And I remember meeting with a guy, and he asked me these questions. Who are you meeting with? What are you reading right now? A couple other questions like that. And I was a young leader in this new big position, and I didn't have any of that. And while it was a negative experience, I think it opened a door for me to recognize just a little bit of clarity that I'm not where I want to be. And I could be somewhere else, and I have no clue where that is. And then so that began through that organization, a year of coaching and getting coached. And so I got to experience that way back, and then I loved it, grew from it, and then started to incorporate some of those things, not even trained as a coach, but it stirred in me. And then that same friend, Ron Sauer, stirred it. And then I think he trained me informally back in 17 or 18. And then I got to practice. I called up a friend who I had mentored, and he was in a new director position as well, doing full-time ministry. And I said, hey, can I basically practice on you? I'll do it. No charge to you. We'll do it for a year, run through the whole thing. It'll be good for me. I believe it'll help for you. So he was all in. We took off, and that was our first experience. Learned a lot from that. And that really stirred in me, as did our cohort team, Paraclete, that this is something that I think I equipped for, passionate about, really believe in. It was that little niche where I think a lot of my skill set and passions collided in this kind of intangible at the time space. And so that led me into wanting to pursue formal training and then the accreditation and everything to get me where I am now.
Yeah, which I so appreciate. We're similar in the way that we both value that training and that certification that isn't actually required for coaching. It's such a weird field where, there's not the licensing requirements that you might have in other helping professions, whether it's counseling or, even teaching.
Right.
And so anyone can get on the internet and say, I'm a coach. And that means a lot of different things to different people. But for you and I, we're like, no, we want to make sure that, for our own integrity and for the sake of the people we're working with, that we have skills and standards that we're growing in and accountable to in order to serve the people that we're coaching well. And so I'm wondering if you could even talk about that kind of baseline. What is coaching for those who are listening who are like, okay, like me? I was like, why would anyone want to be a life coach? Like, what does that actually mean? Right. So can you talk a little bit about what coaching is?
Sure. And it is an abstract thing, really, until you've experienced it. It is hard to put your head around. Really, I think of it in metaphors and analogies that have been most helpful. So I have a few of those as I've thought about it. One, I think, is like a Uber driver meets travel agent. Oh, the Uber driver is not the expert on where I want to go. The travel agent maybe hasn't been there, isn't the expert, but both can be a guide to help me get there in a very confident way. So I put my trust in the Uber driver. This is where I want to go. They navigate the best way there. A bigger trip or journey, the travel agent will really map it out. And so it's that plan. So it's a little bit of that. So the person being coached is in the driver's seat and gets to decide really the clarity on what's important, where do I want to go, vision, right? And then the roadmap, how am I going to get there? Current reality, where am I at now? So that the coach isn't the expert. The person being coached is the expert. So that's a little bit of the framework of it. I also see it as like a miner. As coaches, we're mining for treasure. So the treasure is not mine. It's a curiosity. It's a discovering. I have the tools and I have the conviction that it's there and it exists. So I'm going to dig and pry through thoughtful questioning and curiosity and listening and just being in the space with someone. But I'm so convinced there's going to be a treasure. So it's like we are just mining, and some people are exhausted, don't have the tools, or it sounds like a lot of work, or they don't even think that they don't know that there could be a treasure down there.
Yeah.
So I think that is another great example of what coaching can bring out.
What a great metaphor. I especially love that idea of mining. I talk a lot about excavating, the resources that are already within us. And we come to coaching with this belief that we're not the expert. The person who is the one actually living their own life is the expert on their life. And it's our job to help them discover the resources and the treasure, as you said, that's already within them. But I don't know what your experience has been with your clients. A lot of times people will come to me and they want me to tell them what to do. They're like, okay, you're the coach. Now tell me how to move forward. And they get frustrated with me that I won't give advice, that I won't give them a roadmap, but that I'm more interested in helping them discover where they want to go. Actually, you talked about this idea that we start where we are. We help people move from where they are to where they want to be. And we coach the gap between where they are and where they want to be. And for a lot of people, a lot of the work is even identifying their current reality. Where are you? What is the reality of your life? And then, just as important is identifying what is your ideal future? What do you want your life to look like? What are the goals that maybe you want to move toward, or the vision or the legacy that you want to leave behind, for thinking really big picture, or maybe it's in a specific area, like what kind of leader do you want to be? Or how do you want to lead and influence your family? It could be as specific or as big as the person being coached wants to focus on. But so much of the time there's resistance because they get overwhelmed by the scope of, like, we're talking about our lives here and it matters so much. So to be a coach sitting alongside them and holding that belief, as you said, for them, that there is treasure in you and we're going to find it together, that can be such a beautiful and privileged place to sit.
Yes. And I think, and it's that sitting in that space, right? So creating the space, allowing the space, so pausing for the space to even consider is, I think, the best gift that coaching gives, and the best gift you can give yourself. And when I think back to myself as a younger leader, back in 2007, I was overwhelmed. I had a lot on my plate and I didn't have a lot of clarity, and I was just trying to exist. So exist in the best way and have the most health, and let alone lead the scope of who I was trying to lead and the projects and the people. It was all overwhelming. So it's the best I could just do, just grind and do the best with the couple tools I had. But really, it is, I'm a firm believer in the self-leadership first and starting there. So that would be the life coaching, which I think you and I both slightly cringe at that term, but that's the reality. Somewhere in there is the self-leadership and taking inventory and all those questions you just said. But then it trickles out to my effect of how I lead others, from my family to my organization to the projects and things on my plate. They really are downstream and byproducts of what I have going on here first. Yeah. And so the magic of pausing and having a place to explore that and be curious. But like you said, the client, wants you to magically maybe do that for them. And it's almost impossible to coach someone that doesn't have the desire and willingness to change, or a little bit of the motivation. If they just have a little bit, I think we can mine and we can help them. But then on the other end of the spectrum, those that have a lot, it's the most fun space to be in, because then you're just helping them explore, and this clarity is coming, and from that comes this confidence, and then things seem to fall into place.
Yeah. I loved how you talked about self-leadership as such an important work of healthy leaders. It makes me think of something our dear friend Ron Sauer talks about, how healthy people make healthy leaders, and that idea that our leadership flows out of who we are. And even Brene Brown says who we are is how we lead. So starting with who we are and what our health is internally as humans impacts all of the people around us, whether we're in formal leadership or not. And that's, one of my, I call myself a life and leadership coach, because my conviction is that we are all leaders in some capacity. We all have influence on other people. And so we're influencing people for better or worse, whether we realize it or not.
Yeah.
But then what you were saying about creating that space and the value of creating space to do that reflective, intentional growth work. Sometimes I don't know if you can relate to this, but sometimes I feel like an imposter, or wrestle with that sense of like, you don't actually need me to do this work, client. You don't actually need me to sit with you. It's my joy to sit with you and encourage you and help you sort through, but you're the one, like you said, in the driver's seat, you're the one with the information that I'm trying to help you build awareness about what's already inside of you. But as you said, it's carving out this space and making intentional time to, I use the analogy of kind of dumping out, like your brain is a puzzle in a box. It's like you're dumping all the pieces out on the ground, and together we're flipping them over and sorting out the pieces to see what's even there and where things fit together. But to make the time to do that work, it's difficult because there's so many things pressing against the pressure for how to spend our time and things coming at us constantly. To choose to be intentional and proactive about how we want to live our lives instead of reacting to what's coming at us, that takes a lot of effort.
Yeah, that makes me think on the self-leadership. It is an oxymoron, because you're talking about leading myself. And you're right, like I feel the same way. Like I've learned some skills in how to be in that space and help someone. But really, you might be trying to solve a problem in a tech company, and I don't know any of that. And the beauty is I don't need to be able to help you, but really, to get to the point of even clear self-leadership, I think you need a plan. So I'm a builder also in the blueprints, and I need help. I needed help from my architect building these blueprints and then editing them when we built the same thing again and everything. But then once having that plan, then I can take that and I can lead out on that, because I have very good, clean set of plans. But building that plan, often we feel overwhelmed and I don't even know where to start. I didn't know that I needed a plan, yet alone how to. So I found that I need help, even the best of us and the strongest of leaders. So even as coaches, if you can relate to this, I know how to coach myself. I know I can ask myself the same questions. And yet, as you've seen, I get stuck and I just don't do it by myself. There's certain things I can self-manage, self-lead, but I don't create space for myself very often enough or effectively enough and come out of it with this clarity and this roadmap for the project or the relationship or whatever I'm working on. Unlike when I have a call with you or I'm in that coaching space being coached. And then again, it's not necessarily the magic of the coach. It's the art of the process and someone alongside of you helping. And from that, amazing things come. And then my confidence grows. Oh, I can do this. But by myself, I probably wouldn't have, or I'd just stay stuck for another 6 months or something.
Right. Which isn't that part of our design as humans? We all need someone. I mean, we're designed for relationship, right? We're designed to need other people, whether we want to admit that we need other people or not, to support us. A lot of people say that they want or they need accountability to meet their goals. I actually hate that word. I feel like I have an allergic reaction to it. I don't know what it is about my personality, but accountability feels like pressure or feels like I'm going to get in trouble. So something in me resists that. But I like the word support better.
There you go.
Where we all need some sort of support to help us move in the direction we want to. And I even think about, the best athletes in the world don't become the best athletes because they work really hard on their own. It's because they invest in coaches who can help them see things that they can't on their own, who can help make suggestions about how to move forward and can cheer them on the days that they want to quit. And you could use that analogy for lots of different fields, but in order for us to become the most full expression of ourselves, the healthiest, most effective, to live the lives that are most full of meaning and purpose, and I would argue joy, we need other people in our corner helping us see what we can't, cheering us on when we get discouraged, believing in us when we can't believe in ourselves. And those don't have to be coaches. Those could be mentors. Those could be friends. But there is a legitimate need, I think, for all of us to have people like that in our lives that will spur us on toward greater and greater growth.
Yes. Yeah. And not by accident, like you said, and we share that same belief, made that way. And so the idea of a helper isn't even something from us. And that's where the name of our coaching cohort came from, Paraclete. And it's pointing to the way our Creator set it up with this Holy Spirit who guides us. So whether or not you believe in that, the concept and the principle is there of someone to help, someone to remind, someone to encourage and nudge you on, again, just like an athletic coach. And I believe that wholeheartedly, and to the point where, and you have been on this journey with me, but I love the faith coaching realm and incorporating faith in a lot of coaching. And I'm now confident to be in that space without faith involved. And yet I know internally I'm going to tap in that helper that I have and that I'm a better coach when I am. And it's not magic, but I just know that my coaching will never exist well without that piece of it for me. And I've learned the hard way by trying to do it on my own once I thought I had enough tools and training. But now I know it's a God thing for me, whether or not you're on that same page. And I'm going to be prayerfully present. And that's going to show up in a better way for the client. And unashamedly, that's just what I've realized is the ingredient for me.
Yeah, I agree. And I found the same thing. I've actually discovered this the hard way, how desperately I need God to be with me in those moments where I actually don't have the insight or wisdom on my own to help people move forward. And I've had people ask me questions like, how did you know that? How did you see that? Or how did you know that was the question? And I honestly will say, I have no idea. I don't know. Like, there is a mysterious spiritual presence when we ask God to be with us in the room. Again, like you said, whether the person we're sitting with shares that faith or not, you and I are praying before and during every meeting with clients and inviting God to bring a deeper level of awareness and understanding and confidence and courage to those spaces. And he does. It's powerful. It's faith building for me. And it's honestly quite miraculous to see some of the ways that people move forward, not because I'm any sort of a amazing coach, but because God is for us. He's for us. And he is always in the process of bringing about more and more transformation. And if we are seeking him, we're going to find him. And if we're seeking to become who he's created us to be, he's the one giving us that desire to grow in the first place. So of course he's going to be the one to come and help and be alongside and within us in those places. I'm curious if you're willing to share, and honestly, I just want to say for anyone listening that coaching is a confidential space. We're not going to share anything that you share. But with that in mind, are you willing to share an example or two of some people that you've worked with and ways, maybe specific ways that you've seen growth in them through their coaching experience?
Yeah, I'd love to. I mean, without giving, again, specifics or names. And it's not hard to think of a few because even coaching, you and I both got the privilege of coaching some folks in different countries. And I think it surprised me because I tried to go in very open, not knowing what I'd expect. And yet being surprised that, these people around the world are talking about a lot of the same important areas of our life. So there tends to be a lot around family. So that would be parenting or spouse if you're married, and the health of that or communication involved with that. And then personal health lately, everything that entails from exercise to diet to sleep to all those things. And then really all the big chunk areas of your life, the financial and then the career, the job, your faith and spirituality. So I start listing all those because really I start to think of it's a prioritization. So a few clients in particular didn't have really those key areas identified. So there's a lot of joy and they chose the areas, and then they chose which to tackle first and what was important, where they want to be, where they are now, how they're going to get there, what help they need. And again, the blueprints, the clarity and confidence that came from that. And to give you an even more tangible example, some of my favorite, some of the low-hanging fruit things are some time management things. When I hear of like, I don't have time to fit this and that in, and I don't feel healthy, and I feel out of rhythm. We use that word rhythm a lot. Balance, I think, is, something we chase after. And this idea of perfect balance is, I think, a misnomer. I just don't see it. But I think healthy rhythms, there's times when I have to grind and I don't get a lot of sleep in a week, and that's okay, but there's a rhythm to it. Anyway, so finding the clarity in what their week could look like, and well, maybe I could try this, and I can and this is how I'm going to remember to do that. And this person will be the best to kind of support me in that. And gosh, I would love to do this. What's stopping me? Well, if I do this before that, and it's just these little tweaks. And again, it was just the space. And once they're rolling, they came up with things as opposed to me prescribing, here's some best practices, here's what works well. But usually they land on it, and they'll land on things that I hadn't even thought of that were magic. But they're all of a sudden they're more effective, and they feel like they have more time, and now they're actually using their time to do some of the healthy things that they were really starving themselves and missing beforehand. Those are some of the low-hanging fruit, without thinking of the big area of deeper relationships, a deep conflict. But there was one, and that was someone abroad, and his relationship with his daughter. And it was almost like, standing on the stool in the room and getting that different perspective, the Dead Poet Society or whatever. And it's, what if we looked at it from different? What would you want your daughter to say about you in a year of her relationship with you? And then he really had to think, and what could that look like? How could you approach that different? What are some ways you could respond? And then hearing the next time the change and the fruit that came from that was so exciting and so rewarding. To hear.
And what a gift for people to have a judgment-free space to explore their own life with curiosity, right? It's, again, this is nothing that people couldn't potentially do on their own, but we don't do it. We don't do it without someone asking the questions in a way that allows us to step outside of our lives long enough to see it more clearly. Like you said, standing on the stool in the room from a different perspective. Yeah, I'm thinking about those leaders that we were coaching, the international leaders who, we started with this idea that they wanted leadership coaching specific to their ministry leadership that they were doing. And I think for most of us, the people that we worked with, as we said earlier, it ended up being more about their personal leadership and how they were doing in their relationships, in their parenting, in their marriages, in their relationship with their bodies, in how they were setting boundaries and finding ways to play and rest and recover from this constant output to protect themselves from burnout. And it's so interesting that often what we think we need ends up being secondary to what we actually do need, but we don't know those things until we give ourselves space to explore on a deeper level.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right on.
I'm wondering, for people who are thinking, oh, is coaching kind of like counseling? Like, is that the same idea? Like where you're talking with someone about how you're feeling? Can you give us just a brief overview of how coaching is actually different from counseling?
Yeah. The best analogy I heard was the standing with someone next to a bicycle. Often, how is it different from consulting? How is it different from mentoring, right? Counseling. So maybe we can tackle it together. So a mentor might say, here, let me show you how I ride the bike. Watch me, and you can ride the bike like me. Something like that. Okay, and that's good. A consultant would be, all right, I'm going to lay out for you the best way to use this bike, and here's the best practices for this bike. Tell me what you need, and then I'll consult you a little bit more on everything about this bike because I'm the professional bike rider. You're aspiring to be like me in the bike. A counselor might be more like, how does this bike make you feel? In the past, what kind of bikes did you ride? What kind of bikes did your parents ride? How did that affect you? I don't know.
Totally.
Generalization. I love counseling. And then a coach is a little bit more focused on, where do you want this bike to take you? How are you going to use this bike? What's important to you about this bike? And so it's very forward thinking. It's change. It's, again, clarity. It's all the things we've said, but it's not the expert. The client is the expert. Do we ask feeling questions? Sure. Do we notice change of energy and tone and speech? And hopefully we're paying attention, but we're going in mostly really curious and with a strong conviction they can solve problems. They have deep-rooted things that are important to them, and they are the expert, and they can get there. Like I think we have to really believe that. And even if they don't believe that, and so to draw, and then we're listening, the active listening is really important. Coaches shouldn't be talking much. So if you listen to a session, even that's why some of the formal training was good. We had to record and get feedback. And if I was talking more than a certain percent of the conversation, they'd ding me or so it was really learning to be concise and be clear and let them really share and open up.
Yeah. I heard once during my coach training that the sign of a good coach is a well-scarred tongue, where you're biting your tongue often to make space for the other person to hear themselves think.
Yes.
And I love that bike analogy to describe and model what coaching is and what it isn't. The concise kind of overview that I give people often who want to know how coaching and counseling are different is that I talk about counseling as looking back at the past to get healthy and whole and heal in the present, where coaching, we're starting from a relatively healthy present. Not that we don't always have room for more healing, but relatively healthy, stable, we're not in crisis, place, looking forward toward our ideal future of how we want to grow. So present to future oriented instead of past to present. And like you said, we talk about emotion, emotion, energy and motion is what emotion is, right? And so we have to pay attention to the emotion under the surface. Where is fear coming in? Where's joy entering in? Where are we feeling anxious and what's behind that? Like that's part of paying attention and building awareness about our life. And I talk a lot about how coaching really is about building awareness of what's underneath the surface so that we can choose what to do with it.
So I love that summary of coaching. And then also, you and I both have probably had clients who have simultaneously been in seeing a counselor while seeing us as a coach. And there's been times when we've had to ask the question, how much have you considered looking into a counselor? And some of the action steps and work we've done is getting to the point of them, I need to do this, making an actionable step between the next call that they identify who and they set up the appointment and everything, which might not have come without the coaching. So there's a very clear line when us as coaches recognize, hey, we're not licensed counselors. So the two do go hand in hand and can be a beautiful partnership together.
Yeah, I love that you said that. I'm thinking about people who maybe aren't coaches or don't want to get trained as coaches, but they see the value of coaching and they want to bring coaching skills into their relationships. Maybe it's into their leadership or into their parenting or into their friendships. What are some of the things that coaches do or others could do in their relationships to create that safe space for people to grow in relationship with them?
So the coaching approach, you can integrate into your parenting, into every relationship. I have certainly done it in my organization and my leadership, where I'm not doing formal coaching. I mean, some of them are my staff, some of them are the population we serve. And so the risk would be oversimplifying. But like we've said, the creating space, maybe assuming that those you are leading have the potential to problem solve at the least, to have good ideas. They don't just have to be your ideas and you're delegating. So creating space, getting buy-in, being a good listener. Am I truly listening to the person that's talking? Am I curious? And as a leader, as a supervisor, that can be difficult to do. As a parent, in certain seasons, that was difficult. And I've shared with you, I'm in that season definitely with my teenagers, where I am much more alongside coach and less parenting role, where I'm being very thoughtful in the questions I ask and open-ended. The word why is not in my vocabulary as much anymore. And that's just
what questions do you use instead? Instead of why, what do you say?
What about that is important to you? That seems significant. Tell me more about that. What were some of the things that led to that decision? You're asking the same. The why, we say the why. The why is important, but the question why, unfortunately, can put all of us on defense. But the curiosity under rephrasing it. So what, how, when, all those types of questions. And then even the art of not being quick to just give my advice, like hear their opinion first, hear how they get more of the info in the story. I mean, it's changed how I lead. And then also just incorporating the whole person that I am leading to care more, again, about their self-leadership. So some of our key assessment areas, we talk about their project and program development, but I make them share personal development just when we meet. And it's not a spiritual context or anything, but I just want to hear, are you training for a race? Do you need more downtime? I mean, one of my staff has a side gig business, and we spent time just talking about how to manage her time. And she knows that I want that to be successful and for her to grow in that, which is maybe counterintuitive for a boss, but that kind of coaching approach. And I've seen some pastors in some of my classes incorporate that have just said, hey, I'm a pastor and I'm here. I'm not going to have coach. I just want to have a coaching approach to my parishioners and people I serve. And I think everyone would benefit from that for sure.
Yeah.
Again, not that you need to take a class, but the questions you ask, the space that you give, how you listen, the assumptions you make about people's ability to problem solve and have good ideas and think about what's important when given the space to ponder it. Yeah.
Yeah. In a lot of ways, leading like a coach means releasing our need to be in control or be the expert.
Mm-hmm.
Or be the problem solver in every situation, but almost like unclenching our hands a little bit to say, okay, I trust you to get to the solution you need. How can I support you to get there?
Right.
Which creates more ownership in the people, right, that we're interacting with, as opposed to us coming in as the hero saying, do this and this and this, where there's then no buy-in.
Yeah.
To give people space to come to their own awareness about what's actually happening under the surface and what's important to them and what they need. And that's so powerful. I'm wondering, are there some areas that you see people tending to get stuck in their life in general? What are some of the reasons that you see people not moving forward?
I feel like a broken record because I really think it is the lack of pause. Because even friends and acquaintances and coworkers who have had success, I think a potential, and not even just for more success in their field, but you mentioned the word joy, and that abundant life that we want and that rounded health rhythm, somewhere in that ideal and potential space exists this possibility and potential. And it's just there. It's like there's the mining again. It's just below the surface. And I can't make people carve out an hour. Let me help you, come away with me on a retreat, come, let's explore these things, or let me ask you some questions. But I really think our culture, doesn't really set us up for that, where we grind and we produce and we go. And when we have downtime, there's plenty of distractions to distract us. And I know that firsthand plenty in my life. So I really think that the area folks get stuck. So it's really broad, is just the lack of a self-assessment and where do I want to be and what do I really want this area or this relationship to look like? What could it? And the dreaming a little bit. I think that's a hindrance in and of itself.
When I think about when you mentioned dreaming, how energizing dreaming is. I do some group coaching and just finished up another cohort of working with women who want to be more intentional in their lives. And one of my favorite exercises is to dream with them and facilitate a space for them to dream about different areas. And you can feel the energy in the room shift when you give people permission to dream. It's like there is something inherently energizing about that. And we don't make space for it because there's so much we have to do day to day. And the other thing you mentioned earlier that feels so simple and yet none of us do it because we don't make the time often, which is to look at all the things that could be priorities for us in our life, which there's almost an unlimited list of things that could take our time and attention and energy. And from season to season, and we talk about even like 2 to 3 months at a time, in the season that you're in right now, what are your top 3 to 5 priorities? Where are the places or the people that you don't want to drop the ball, where you want to make time and energy for, even if other things fall away? And so asking ourselves those questions and identifying, naming them. So it's not just this, kind of abstract idea in the back of our minds, but being really specific and then creating a plan, like you said earlier, to make those priorities into a reality. There's such power in that. And again, it sounds simple, but unless we take the time to do that work, we're missing out on the potential for transformation.
And I love that word, transformation. And you're right. For me, it's very seasonal, and it could just be a season of transition. It could just be having kids. You kind of go by the quarter system or school or re-up on a year. So there's this idea of like the life plan, which would be the big scope, but even a small plan. I mentioned blueprints, but the confidence that comes from that. And then that tool helps you with your priorities because it's like, oh, I have a step. Let me consult on that. So you're peeking at it often. You're editing. It's a living document. And again, even if it's just around a little 3 months or one specific relationship or situation, let alone your whole scope areas of your life, it's a guide because you've done the hard work and you've considered what matters and some of the obstacles and how to get there and everything. So you can refer to that. And then, so when the opportunities come up, you know better what to say yes or no to.
Yeah.
So often we're stuck because I don't know. Is that a good opportunity? Do I want that? Do I want that more than that? This came to my mind this morning, but we do all these tests. So I did the blood work test that a lot of people our age are doing. And one of the things that came back, pre-diabetic. I think a lot of people are pre-diabetic. too much sugar and carbs. I'm like, not a shocker. Good to know. I'm pre-diabetic. I had a dermatologist appointment because I have a little spot, and it's precancerous. It's like, good, they can manage that. But all these pre-things, but we go the screening, we go to the doctor, we take the time, wait for the appointment. Like, you got to care, you got to put in the work, and you get the screening, and you realize you're pre. Okay, so now if I don't do anything about this, it's going to go in this direction. And a lot of the health things we're into nowadays are all pre. It's joy and feel better now, but it's also I'm avoiding things down the road. And it just makes me think of this whole coaching and putting time into consider what's important to us and how we're leading others and what I want to see in these different areas. And not to work from the negative, but it's pre-burnout. It's pre-regret. The season I'm with a teenage son, and I've navigated that. Like, what am I going to regret if my priorities aren't dialed in these next 6 months, and then he's not under my roof, and I didn't pause to consider that this is a big priority, and this takes my time, and this is over this. So pre-regret, pre-burnout, pre-time lost. It's not a quick pill, but it's more of a way of living, that's a little more intentional and a little more freeing, but more joy. And it's still rocky and hard, and the obstacles come, but then like a GPS, you readjust and you go. You've got your general roadmap. I know better where I want to go, but I'll just find a way around it, and I know how to get the help I need.
I love those metaphors as a picture of how we want to live our lives. And as you were talking, I remembered my greatest fear used to be that I would get to the end of my life and look back and realize I'd wasted it, that I'd missed it. And there was like a deep-seated fear in me that motivated me to do as much as I could so that I didn't waste my life. And on one level, it was motivating. And on the other, it created a sense of anxiety and panic because I felt this pressure to do everything and do everything well, so I didn't miss it. And it wasn't until I started working with Ron as a coach that I realized, no, my life is right now. And the gifts and passion and opportunities and circumstances that God has placed me in right now that are in front of me today, this matters. And being intentional today, and then again tomorrow, and then the next day, that's how I don't waste my life. Yeah. It's not something that I can, on an unhealthy level, absorb all this pressure to do all the things and do it right. But it's being faithful with what's in front of me. Who am I designed to be? What are the circumstances that I'm in and the limitations of the season I'm in, and also the responsibilities and gifts of the season that I'm in that God's given me to tend to and to care for in a way that also honors my limitations and my needs and my unique wiring. And without coaching, I wouldn't have had that awareness and the freedom and the confidence. We talk a lot about how coaching brings confidence and clarity and courage. I wouldn't have had those things without someone else saying, yes, I see you saying these things about your life, Jillian, and I affirm it from the outside looking in. I agree with what you are becoming aware of. What you're saying makes sense.
Well, and you live that, and you're such a blessing to people who get to be in your space and coached by you or in one of your group coaching or the book I know that will be coming eventually too, but all that. But just, I hear you say all that and you articulate it as best as any I've heard, but I know that that's your passion. So that
thank you.
Trickles down into all the different areas that people get to experience you, which is
thank you.
Huge blessing. So good job.
Thank you, friend. So if people are interested in coaching and they wanted to work with you, do you have space for clients? And if so, how would they reach you?
I do have space right now. I have a couple slots for clients, and I'd be excited to explore that. And we usually start with like a discovery call, we call it, just to see if it's a good fit. And there's no harm in trying that. And my website is like a digital business card, jesseaguero.com. And that'd be a good
I'll
one.
link that in the show notes so people can find you easily. And I'll just say too, Jesse, I also am accepting new clients. And so if people are interested in pursuing more, again, they can find us on our websites, and same, I offer a discovery call that's free so we can really get a sense of what people need and if it would be a good fit and good timing and all that. So I hope people take you up on that opportunity. Before we wrap up, is there a permission slip that you would want to give the people who are listening?
Yes. Thanks for asking. I would love for people to give themselves a permission to pause and consider where they want to be, where they are, and then allow someone to help them get there. If people could give themselves permission to do that, it could be life-changing.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Thank you, Jesse. This has been such a rich conversation. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Permission Slips. I hope this conversation has given you permission to reflect on the life that you want to live and to make space to consider what your current reality is, as well as what your ideal future might look like. And if nothing else, to have some conversations with people that can help you see your life a little more clearly. Remember, your life matters, and so do your priorities, more than you know.